Welcome and thank you for coming. My name is Jenny Young Seidemann. I'm the registered dietitian at Mercy Medical Center's Cardiac Rehab Department. And today we're going to talk about sodium and blood pressure and the DASH diet. And the DASH diet doesn't have to do with Mrs. Dash, it has to do with fabulous research about eating and lowering blood pressure. So we'll get the show on the road. We do need some sodium, believe it or not. It's an essential nutrient and it's important for many functions in the body. The problem comes in when we get too much, and so we'll talk about that. Why are we concerned? Because excess sodium is a risk factor for high blood pressure, heart failure. If you do have heart failure, it can make you retain fluid, and that makes it more work on the heart and harder to breathe also. Stroke, heart attack, some less known things, stomach cancer, osteoporosis, greater risk of kidney stones, water retention, and headaches. So excess is not a benefit. Okay, so how much do we need? The amount that we need to live is about 500 milligrams a day. And I know that normal people don't talk in milligrams, but on a label, that's what you're going to see. And when you see doctors' recommendations and so forth, they'll be in milligrams. But I will translate. 500 milligrams is about a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. So here's a teaspoon, and it would just be a quarter of that would give you adequate sodium for the entire day. So it doesn't really take much to do those important functions. Most Americans get way more than they need, 3,400 milligrams, which is way too much. Heart Association and Cardiac Rehab recommend 1,500 milligrams or less of sodium a day. And the amount, if this was full, the amount of sodium in here would be 2,300 milligrams. So if you liberally salt, you're going to be over the recommendation for the day. Okay, this is a question I get a lot. What is the difference between salt and sodium, and are different types of salt better than other types of salt? So salt is sodium and chloride, sodium chloride put together. So that means that salt is a main source of sodium, but it's not the only source of sodium. The types of salt that are high in sodium are all of them. So it doesn't matter if it's table salt, kosher salt, sea salt, fancy pantsy, Himalayan pink sea salt, whatever, they're all high in sodium. So you could make the case for the bigger chunks, maybe you'll use less, but they're all high in sodium. Okay, so where do we get sodium? Well, from salt, obviously. Salt is a main source of sodium. It's also naturally occurring even in the healthiest of foods. So if you don't salt your foods and you don't eat packaged, processed, etc., you'll still get some sodium, and that's okay because, as I said, you need some. If you are adding it at the table and in home cooking, you could be, this is 11% it says, but if you're really using a lot of salt as seasoning and cooking, that could put you over the recommendation for the day. If you're making a giant pot of soup at home and it's going to make, I don't know, 10 servings, and you put a half a teaspoon of salt in there, that's not going to be excessive when you get down to the amounts of servings. Most of it is going to come from processed, packaged, canned food and takeout. If you do takeout or if you do sit down, fancy restaurant, fast food, they're both going to be high in sodium. So here's a little pie chart. So processed, restaurant, takeout is a big bulk. So processed is going to be packaged, canned, convenience foods. So here's just an example of what can happen with the processing. This, for some reason, is whole milk, which is not recommended on the cardiac diet. For heart healthy diet, you would want non-fat milk or 1% because we want to minimize animal fat. But milk is usually higher in potassium, lower in sodium. This is a win-win for blood pressure and other functions in the body because potassium helps lower blood pressure and sodium raises it. If you have kidney disease and you have been told that you need to watch potassium intake, then that's going to be another discussion because some people do need to watch potassium. If you don't have that issue, your doctor hasn't told you you need to watch potassium, then you want the higher potassium foods that are naturally low in sodium. So here's milk, lots of potassium, very little sodium, but then you turn it into pudding and now you've got mostly sodium. Roast beef, which is also not at the top of the list for a heart healthy diet, you would want fish or chicken or even beans as your protein food. But at any rate, fresh meat, if you're cooking from fresh, and well, let's pretend it's venison because that's very lean. So if this was venison, it would be a good source of potassium, very little sodium. But you turn it into something out of a package that's lunch meat or packaged meat or any kind of processed meat, the sodium is going to go way, way. Here's a lovely piece of fresh corn, which would be on your heart healthy diet, mostly potassium, very little sodium. You take it out of a can, now you've got mostly sodium. Fresh peach, no sodium to even speak of, really. Turn it into a pie, and there you go. We've got lots of sodium. So rolled oats would definitely be on your heart healthy diet. If you just do old fashioned oats and cook them, and these can be really quick. You can cook them in the microwave very fast. But if you get the packaged, then the sodium goes up. If the convenience pouches are the only way that you're going to eat oatmeal, I still am a fan of oatmeal, but you would want to compare the labels to get the lowest sodium uh, packaged one. And we'll talk about how to read the labels here in a little bit. Okay, so here's the American Heart Association's salty six. So breads and rolls, it really depends on the breads and rolls, but if it's this type of thing, and especially if it's white flour, that's I call the white bread ripoff. Watch my fiber video and you'll learn why it's the white bread ripoff. But at any rate, these kinds of buns and rolls and things tend to be high in sodium. And if you go out and get a sandwich or something with this, the artisan breads that are very popular now are quite high in sodium. Pizza, high in sodium for sure, also high in animal fat. So where's the sodium? It's in the crust, it's in the sauce, it's in the cheese, it's definitely in pepperoni because that's a processed meat. Sandwiches and burgers from restaurants and fast food, for sure, those are going to be high in sodium. Whole cuts and cured meats, here's bacon, which is not a heart healthy meat at any rate. It's high in animal fat, but also high in sodium. Lunch meat, high in sodium. Soup, notorious. So here's a bunch of soup in a can, but if you go out to eat and get soup, same situation. Soup is a high sodium proposition. So here's a burger. So sodium in the buns, sodium in these onion rings, sodium, they're going to salt the meat, sodium in the cheese, definitely sodium in the bacon. This is a fast food burrito and taco, and the Heart Association has tagged those as being particularly also high in sodium. So that's going to be in the fillings because they're going to salt, and there's typically cheese, and then they're going to have sauces and toppings, and the white tortilla is also going to have sodium. Okay, so here are some numbers because I had said, okay, under 1500 milligrams of sodium a day is our ideal target. So 3 slices of bacon, 580 just for that. So along with the other food in the day, you're probably going to be over the limit. Bologna, same thing, 1 slice, that's high. And this is sort of, what shall I say, all these foods on this page are calories without benefits. In other words, there are not nutrients in here that are really going to help protect your heart. Okay. So here's just a Subway bread, Italian 12-inch, 620 milligrams of sodium just in the bread alone. This isn't counting what's inside the sandwich. So these things are high. A little bit more, we'll talk more about labels, but here's a box of mac and cheese. Always look at the serving size because everything on the label is according to whatever that says. So this label thinks you're only going to eat half the box. Is that true? Because if you're going to eat the whole box, you have to double everything. Just for half of the box, we've got 690 milligrams. So that's already high. If you eat the whole box, that's 900 and whatever the math is, way too high. Okay. Here's one slice of pizza from a 1/4, a quarter of a, 14 inch. So 14 inch is a dinky pizza, right? That's not a big pizza. It's a tiny one. And this is a meat lovers, granted, so there is going to be sodium in the meat, but it's a day and a half worth of sodium right there. A lot of these bowls are popular now for takeout and to go and so forth. So here's a Taco Bell Power Bowl with chicken, and you'll see you're almost up to the limit for the whole day. And where's that coming from? This chicken, when you get takeout or rotisserie chicken or restaurant chicken, that chicken's been injected with sodium broth to keep it plump and juicy. So that has turned your chicken that was, if it was fresh and you cooked it from fresh at home, it would not be high in sodium. But you get it takeout or restaurant, then the chicken becomes a high sodium proposition because they've injected it with sodium. The cheese, of course, is going to be high. Not sure exactly what else is on here. Some sauces and various things that have added up to, I think olives out of a can. So that added to it. Sour cream has some sodium. I'm not sure. I think there's rice over there. And so that's probably seasoned with salt. Okay, so that's going to be a high one as well. Oh, cheese, it's so delicious, but it's high in animal fat, which we're trying to reduce on the heart healthy diet. It's also high in sodium. So for a little cube of, if it was a cube of mozzarella, it'd be 190. Swiss is the lowest sodium cheese. And so if you're really watching sodium and you have to have cheese and you like Swiss, you might go for that. It's not the lowest fat cheese, so you're picking your battles here. I always like to show cottage cheese because it's got that cheese word in it, which means it's still high in sodium. So you can get the low fat or even non-fat cottage cheese, and it's a high quality protein, but it still is really high in sodium, 450 milligrams per half a cup. So what are we going to do with these things? Eat it less often, don't eat it, eat smaller amounts, find something else you enjoy. Okay, here's some dining out sandwiches. So in other classes, I'll talk about the fats and the saturated fat, but the saturated we definitely want to minimize on a heart healthy diet. But over here, we're focused on the sodium. So Big Mac, quite high. Just a plain old hamburger for a meal. If there wasn't a lot of other sodium in the meal, that's not super high, 490. So basic hamburger would probably be the lowest choice. But, of course, the hamburger's not the most heart healthy. It's got the white flour bun and it's got, it's high fat meat in the hamburger. But if we're just dialing in on sodium, that'd be the lowest one. Quarter pounder with cheese, the sodium went way up. Filet of fish, that's a fried proposition, so that's always going to be high. Here are two chicken sandwiches, artisan grilled chicken. You think grilled chicken, that's going to be a heart healthy. In general, it's low in the saturated fat. That's great, but the sodium is quite high. So that's the artisan bread, and it's the chicken that's been injected, and like anything that says crispy means it's deep fried. So crispy means deep fried, unless you're talking about a carrot stick. So, this is going to be quite high because of the breading and the chickens. So Subway Again, with the chicken, low in saturated fat, high in sodium because of the bread. Actually, we're going for the wheat for the oat bread here. That's their lowest sodium bread, but still has some. Most of this is coming from there's no cheese on this sandwich either. So most of this is coming from the chicken and the bread. Roast beef, kind of high. Meatball marinara, quite high. The lowest would be a veggie delight on whole wheat with no cheese, no olives, no pickles. So it's basically vegetables on the on the bread. So you could go for they have a chopped salad, so you could do chopped salad, and even if you put chicken on that, um, you would have taken away the sodium of the bread, so that would give a little more balance if it sounds appealing. You're probably getting that the healthiest thing is to make it yourself at home. Wow, here we go. What to do? If you eat mostly fresh, unprocessed, so if you buy, fresh meat, or you're a hunter or a fisher person and you have that fresh fish or venison, those are going to be fresh, unprocessed, fresh veggies, fresh fruit. If you cook beans from dried, that's the least processed. Then those things are going to automatically be higher in potassium, lower in sodium, and so that's a win-win both ways. Don't use a lot of salt. Get rid of the salt shaker. If you're doing all home cooking and you use a little salt in the home cooking, that's not going to sink your ship. Comparing labels, we are going to talk more about the labels. So choosing no salt added or low sodium in a can or a package, and that will save you a lot of sodium. If you do have canned foods, if you drain and rinse in a colander, that will get rid of some of that extra sodium. On veggies, if you go frozen veggies typically don't have any sodium added, no salt added. You can check the ingredient list, but usually frozen veggies, and those do retain a lot of their benefit. They flash freeze them after they pick them. So frozen veggies can be a big bonus. And herbs and spices I can't say enough about all of the herbs and spices that you can use to make food taste good. And I will have an example here in a moment of things you can do. So if you're thinking to yourself, things taste terrible without salt, I love salt. Here's what we do. So salt is an acquired taste. If you really like salty food, that's really an acquired taste. If you give a little kid something super salty, they'll go back. They don't like it. So it's an acquired grown-up taste, and you can readjust your taste buds. It might take a little while, 3, 4, maybe a little more weeks to adjust your taste buds so that you're not craving the salt anymore. If you cut down on portion size, that's one strategy for decreasing sodium. So if there's something you absolutely love, but you know it's higher in sodium and you're not willing to omit it completely, then have a smaller portion and that will reduce the amount of sodium. If you plain old increase your fruits and veggies and then decrease the amount of the other foods, then that's a win-win. So here are some herb spice ideas. Here's Mrs. Dash, and that is a salt-free seasoning. There's no salt in. There are different flavors, so you can see which one you like the best or which one you like on different foods. This Kirkland here, this is a no salt seasoning from Costco that a lot of people really like, and it doesn't have any salt, no salt seasoning. It's all herbs and spices. These are just some other spices, chili powder, savory, paprika, garlic powder over here instead of garlic salt, switch to garlic powder. Salt-free lemon pepper. If you like spicy stuff, go for the heat. Put some cayenne on, put some pepper on, get some chili peppers in there. If you like heat, put some heat in, and then you won't miss the salt so much. Here's just some fresh chives chopped up, otherwise known as, I just call them green onions. Here's some fresh basil. You can go fresh or dried. This lemon zest is here because if you add a pop of citrus, that can prick your taste buds so that you don't miss the salt as much. And all blends of herbs like this Kirkland one and Mrs. Dash, they all have some either lemon oil or the lemon zest or a little orange peel because that really lifts up the flavor without having the salt. But you can do that yourself, add a little lemon juice, add a little lemon zest. It really perks things up without the salt. Labels. Okay, so again, always look at the serving size. This is a cup and a half of mystery food. I don't know what this is supposed to be, but pretend it's something you are reading at the supermarket. So in the nutrition facts, we're going to hit right down to sodium. So 460, you might already think, yeah, if I'm shooting for 1500 for the whole day, 460 is going to be too much. If you want the quick and easy, you go to this percent daily value here. 20% is definitely high. If this daily value is 5% or less, that will be low sodium for the serving size. So a super quick check on something is serving size, daily value to check the sodium. Okay, so if that was 5 or less, then that would work. And here are the words: 5% daily value or less, that's going to be low. But always look at the serving size. If I'm going to eat 3 cups, then I'm going to be, doubling this. And then I'm definitely going to be over for the day. So read the nutrition facts on the back and check. You can also use this to compare foods. So here we're comparing, and I'm a big fan of oats for the heart healthy diet. It's a whole grain, has soluble fiber, helps lower LDL, the lousy cholesterol, helps with regularity, very important stuff. So here I am at the serving size, half a cup dry. Well, who eats their oats dry? So if you cook that, it turns into a cup. Okay. So what's the cup of oatmeal? Here's a measuring cup, but this is a oatmeal. Okay. So check it out. If it's old-fashioned oats, 0 sodium. Pretty good. If you go to the instant, so now we're on to the packets, the sodium is the more convenient the thing is, the more the sodium is going to go up. That's just how it works. So one packet is going to be like a cup of the old fashioned. And so now we're at 240. 240 is not going to sink your ship if this is the only way that you're going to eat oatmeal and you're enjoying this. It is quick and convenient. This could certainly fit into a heart healthy diet. 240 sounds like a lot compared to 0, but if you're looking at the whole day, 1500, 240 at a meal, if this is the main part of your meal, and you add some fruit and you add some milk and maybe some unsalted nuts, then this is still going to be a low sodium meal. Okay. If we go over, a lot of people like Cheerios, 1 cup. Again, is that enough Cheerios? I don't know. So if you're going to eat 2 cups, then we're going to double it and get 380. So I'm the nutrition expert, not the math expert, right? So anyway, so still that would not sink your ship, but I just want to point out because there is sodium in things you wouldn't typically think sodium is in. So just be sure to always check the label of anything that you're buying. Okay. On the front of the label, it can be tricky on the front. So I want to give you some things you can really hang your hat on. The Food and Drug Administration does actually regulate some of the claims on the front. And the things that they regulate, if it says sodium free, that's a regulated term, and that would definitely be low sodium. So if it says that on the front, then it's going to be low. If it says a low sodium on the front, that would also be low for the serving size. If it says no added salt, regulated claim, they won't add any salt in the processing. There will be some naturally occurring sodium in the food, but they won't have added any. So these I made green for green light. Of course, you still want to look at the serving size on the low sodium, because if you're going to eat the whole thing, it might turn into a high sodium depending on what it is. But here's a low sodium broth, and the serving on the back of this is 1 cup. So for 1 cup, it'll be less than 140. Okay. So you could use this for sauteing so things don't stick, or you could use this as a base for homemade soup. Here's a no salt added black beans, so there will be no salt added. Okay. These that I put the red down, red for warning, I guess. There are terms like lower or reduced sodium, and it will say, 25% less than the original product. Well, the original product might have been enough for 3 days, right? So if it's 25% less than that, it's still not a low sodium choice. It's less than the regular product, but still not within the recommended. Same with light, 50% less, same thing. If the original is really high, half of that is still too high. So here are some examples. Here's chicken noodle soup. And so here's regular, $8.90 for the can. Here's, where does it say? Low sodium right there, $140 for the whole can. So quite a difference, huge difference, huge, huge, huge. Okay, some other ones. So diced tomatoes. I don't have the serving size here. I think it's for a half of a cup. And so that's a lot for a half a cup. Here's without, and so that sounds high to me for no salt added. But at any rate, it's quite a big difference. So there is going to be some naturally occurring sodium in the tomatoes. Here's a regular pasta sauce, quite high. Here's no added salt, big, big difference. So really looking at the front and, looking at the shelves. When you go shopping, it'll take a while at first, but then you'll find the products that you like and you'll know right where to go, and then it won't be a big production anymore. This American Heart Association heart check, that actually means something. And for sodium, for the serving size, it will be limited. It will be a low sodium food for the serving size if it has this heart check. The thing is with this heart check, this is a little bit of a newer thing, and there are still some older labels out there that will sound like heart healthy or look like heart healthy. If it doesn't have exactly American Heart Association certified, then you'll still want to be checking the sodium. The food industry hasn't really caught up with their labeling updates yet. Okay, so if you do dine out or do takeout, sauces, condiments, things on the side, the condiments can really add a lot of sodium. You can ask them to leave off the cheese. You can ask sauce on the side. You can tell them you're on a low sodium or that you need a low sodium diet. And because things that I ask them not to add salt, ask them not to add soy sauce, ask them not to add MSG, which is monosodium glutamate, right? And you can add things for flavor. I know some people will carry little packets of things around if they go out to eat so they can have their spice of choice on their foods. Here are some more sources. So salt, again, a teaspoon has 2,300 milligrams of sodium. So you'll want to ask for no salt and avoid salting your food. This light salt, so that's that light, definition I was talking about. So it's got less, about half, but it still is quite a bit of sodium. So better, but not quite within recommendations. Baking powder, baking soda, if you're cooking at home and you're using these, you have to use them or your product won't, your food won't turn out. This is just a FYI, that things do contain sodium. Even if you think that, I don't cook with any sodium, there is sodium in things. Here's monosodium glutamate, so you'll want to ask, you wouldn't have this at home, but if you're out to eat, particularly Chinese food traditionally has used MSG, so you could ask about that. Regular soy sauce, pretty high. At home, you can get low sodium soy sauce, or you can dilute it with some water to take down the sodium. Bouillon cubes quite high, or regular broth is quite high. So, if you're home, you can use the low sodium broth. You can look for bouillon cubes with no salt added. Some of those are kind of like taking a potassium supplement. So you want to watch the ingredients depending on your medications and your health history. And I'll get onto that and explain that more in a moment. I promised the DASH diet, and here it is. So, dietary approaches to stopping hypertension, otherwise known as DASH. And you'll see from this beautiful picture, it's got lots of fruits and veggies. We've got some lean protein foods in here. The thing that's very not showing here is that it does include non-fat or low-fat milk and yogurt too. I'll show you an example in a minute. But the idea with the DASH diet is what they did was had a typical American diet and then compared it to what you call a control diet. In other words, typical American versus something different. Well, the something different, initially, all they did was add fruits and veggies over here to the typical American diet. Here's the typical, it's backwards on my screen. Anyway, add fruits and vegetables to a typical American diet, and people's blood pressure went down. Amazing. The next step was actually the whole DASH diet, which is low in sodium and makes other changes. And following the full DASH diet compared to the typical American diet really significantly lowered people's blood pressure. So that was a big finding, and this study happened, gosh, decades ago now, but it's been repeated and added on and so on and so forth. So this is a really excellent plan, not only for blood pressure, but for general heart health as well. So what does it look like? It's high in fruits and vegetables, surprise, whole grains instead of refined or white flour foods. It does include dairy because when I say dairy, I mean milk or yogurt. The cheese is still going to be high in sodium, so it's not cheese, it's milk and yogurt, because those do contain nutrients that help with blood pressure, such as calcium and potassium and protein. Okay. Replacing some animal protein foods with plant protein can be a help, and reducing sodium, yes, of course. And then some other things about fats and sweets. And I just put note, Mrs. Dash doesn't have anything to do with the DASH diet, but Mrs. Dash is a salt-free seasoning that you could use if you were following the DASH diet. Here's a sample day that I just made up to give you an idea of what it might look like. So you're really shooting for those fruits and veggies. So fruit and or veggies with every single meal, okay? So here's a old-fashioned oats, walnuts, which are unsalted, cinnamon, some orange slices, non-fat milk. So this is a low sodium, high nutrition breakfast. And here's a snack, carrot sticks with hummus. Hummus is dip made from garbanzo beans. So you could buy hummus dip commercially. That would be higher in sodium than if you made it at home, because at home you could use the no salt added can of beans, or the low sodium can of beans and rinse it. And then the other ingredients in hummus are, yeah, they're all low sodium. It's garlic and some olive oil and the garbanzo beans and maybe some tahini, which is sesame paste from sesame seeds. But if you make it at home, there are many hummus recipes that you could make low sodium at home. If you bought it commercially, just compare the labels and find a low sodium one. Tuna sandwich on whole grain bread. So you're going to have a little sodium in the bread. You're going to have some sodium from your tuna if it's out from a can. And so we're going to look for the lower sodium bread, and tuna is a fish, which is a heart healthy protein source. Sweet pepper slices, no sodium there. Non-fat milk, very low in sodium, and again has the protein and the calcium and the potassium that help with blood pressure. Apple a day keeps a you know who away, even if it's a teeny tiny apple. That is a big benefit to have the fruits and veggies in here. Here's just an example of a dinner. So baked chicken so you bought raw chicken and cooked it, so it's not going to be the injected stuff. Bake a sweet potato. I like to mash that and put some nutmeg on there, quite tasty. Asparagus roasted with olive oil, very delicious. And then you could put herbs on there like the Mrs. Dash, or you could just use garlic powder. You could use fresh garlic, would really make that, oh, and some lemon juice, make that taste really good. And then here's green salad. And I'm being real, we mostly have dressing on our salad usually. If that's a homemade dressing, you could certainly make it low sodium at home. An oil and vinegar at home doesn't have any added salt. If it's out of a bottle, it will have salt. So you'll want to compare your different salad dressings. And then here's a snack of some yogurt with blueberries. So you'll notice I've got fruits and or veggies at every meal. There are 3 servings of non-fat milk and yogurt. So that's part of the DASH diet. We've got some heart healthy protein foods in here, which would be the nuts and tuna and chicken and yogurt and milk. Okay, what else? We've got whole grains, which is in there. So we've got the oatmeal, the whole grain bread, and here we have sweet potato, which is a starchy vegetable, so that can count in the whole grain section. And we've got heart healthy fats in here from the tuna and the olive oil and the nuts and the hummus. So this is covering all the bases. So this would be, the DASH diet is a heart healthy diet. It's also low in sodium. And as I said, it was found to lower blood pressure. Fabulous. Okay. Oh, I said I would talk about the salt substitutes and also about salt substitutes and potassium. So these, I just don't like to buy something where they can't spell right. New salt. Anyway, here's no salt. These products, instead of sodium chloride, the salt that we're used to, these use potassium chloride. So I'm showing you the back of this no salt label. So it says potassium chloride here. And then down here it says, oh, if you have kidney disease or you have certain medications, then you have to watch out. So particularly if you have kidney disease and you're supposed to be watching potassium, then you would not want this at all. If you're on certain medications, like over here is spironolactone, that one you're not supposed to do potassium supplements. So if you're liberally using one of these, you're kind of like giving yourself a potassium supplement. If you're just not sure or you have any question, you could ask your doctor if these are appropriate for you to use. The salt-free herbal mixtures don't have any potassium chloride. So those are just herbs and spices. So bigger picture for blood pressure and heart health. If you ever watch cartoons, this character's name is Dash. So I put him in there. So if you smoke, quitting smoking, stress, of course, affects blood pressure. Exercise helps lower blood pressure. DASH diet, fruits and vegetables, things we've already talked about on the DASH diet. Alcohol in excess can raise blood pressure. And of course, take your medications as prescribed. And a lot of the blood pressure medications say no natural licorice, which is the black stuff. So be sure you read that little tiny print, get your magnifying glass or whatever, and read, what you're supposed to not have with your medications. And that's it. So I hope this was very helpful for you to get onto a low sodium, heart healthy diet. And there will be more videos coming. I hope you're enjoying them and getting a lot out of them. And until next time, I will be signing off. Bye-bye.